Okay, we're here today. We're going to do the ram skull and the copper vessels. What we're going to be looking for today is the way the copper vessels disappear into one another and how we can have them play off of one another. A lot of the colors are the same. There's some good darkness. I've got the black sheep behind it to bring forth the copper, that tall copper pot from the background of the white wall. I still left a lot of shadows in there. You know how I love shadows, so those are in there. We're going to start out with our 4H, 2H, HB, 2B, 4B, 6B, our eraser, and of course our eraser shield. So when we start out, in real life, we're looking for the field goal, you know, that area that we put up to see what is it that we want to draw. Now, in your situation, you've got a photograph. Photographs are good too. Things don't move. You don't have to deal with the weather. Things don't, you know, unless like with one of the lemon things, the lemon moved on me, but generally they don't move. They're not supposed to move, so that's an advantage. One of the things when using a photograph is watch out for fisheye. Fisheye happens, it starts to curve around the edges of the photograph. So if you've got a photo where the edges are curved around, either try to straighten them out or find another photo, because when you work from a photo, it's obvious to somebody who hasn't, or rather who has worked with photographs. We're familiar with the fisheye. So when you go to competition and you put a painting on the wall or a drawing on the wall, it's obvious to us that, you know, it's done by from a photograph when it's fisheyed like that. And maybe that's the effect you want to get, but I don't particularly care for it. So what I'm going to do, just like always, we start with our goalposts. I've arranged my my paper in portrait so that I can see the extent of the rise. One of the things that I did was I put in that drapery in the back. It guides our eye back down into the composition where the vessels are going to be. So I'm going to start with my 4H, and I'm going to get in just like, and I've said it before, as if the UPS man has dropped something off on my front porch, all saran wrapped. You know, it's in a shrink wrap. So you'll probably maybe not see the lines that I'm putting down, but that's okay. This is with my 4H. They're very, very light lines. I'm just going to rough in my subjects, looking at the negative space, trying to already get the some of the shapes down where they need to be. I'm going to work a lot with my negative space in this beautiful handle here. Make sure that I'm still on track the whole way around the vessel. If this is the edge of my handle here, my horizontal line comes across, and I can see where does it attach to the other side of the vessel there. So I've got too many lines down to begin with for as far as I'm concerned, so I'm going to go ahead and take some of these out. In all actuality, you don't have to take these out. You don't have to erase the 4H. You can work around it. See, all those lines that I just erased will sooner or later in my composition disappear, because I am working with a graduation of the pencils from light to dark. This is the ram skull. Get in a couple of the important features. Now the nose bone of the ram skull really has some really interesting light patterns on it. So it's right down front. The antlers are going to be kind of a trick because they do all that curving around. All kinds of curving, and you're going to have to draw what you see and not what you know as far as a curve goes. I'm looking at some of the negative space in here, getting my curves down. This might be a little bit too big, and I've got my composition all the way over to the right now. So I'm working the whole way across the page. I'm really filling the page. Really want to see you fill the page. Across from my ram skull, I'm going to do a horizontal, see where it intersects with this pot over here, this vessel over here rather. I don't want to call them pots. They're not pots. They may be Middle Eastern water jars, water vessels is what I think they are. So I'm way over against the edge. So that one piece is going to disappear, and I'm going to come up here. I'm going to check on the handle of my large pitcher, and I see that this is a nook here, and I'm going to come straight across, and I'm going to see where does that connect, and the handles of this vessel connect where that is. So see how I did that? I ran that across there from here to here to see where does my handle connect. So, you know, using those drop lines and those horizontal lines to your advantage. Go ahead and do that. This is where the vessels come together for me. I'm going to look at my negative space. Maybe it's a little bit more negative space in here. I've got the handle of my vessel over here. I've got a couple diamonds. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 diamonds in the pattern. So if this is my 1, 2, 3, if this is my larger vessel, let me just count out what would be the 8 diamonds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And I should be to my handle. So I'm not to my handle. I've got an opportunity to move this vessel over maybe, but that would mess up all this down here. So I have to be careful of the way I engineer this. And I'm gonna have to be aware that this pot may be a little bit wide unless I can bring this vessel over, which is probably what I'm gonna try to do. It's just a little bit off to the right. Now, one of the things why we do this, as far as sketching it all in real quick and lightly, when we work on our composition, we have to decide where we are as far as the drawing goes. So the handle's going to come up even taller than that. I can see negative space right here in the handle, so I want my handle up even taller than that, which is fine. But you see how I use the diagonal of the diagonal of the drapery to determine where my stuff is going. So this is where the majority of my stuff is going. So this is the handle. Here's an O, and then we come down here, and this is a stout little jug. Erase some of the lines that might get in the way later as far as what I'm looking at. This is the continuation of my drapery, which is accurate to what I see in my reference. You're going to be using your photograph. I'll be using my the live setup. So here I am. I'm going to switch now to my 2H, go a little bit darker, start to work out some of the details, see some of the shapes. All these shapes back in here, and this is of course what we call negative space. Starting to fill in some of the darkest darks right away. Lightly. A little bit of contouring, get this shape in here. I'm looking to see that this is not vertical. It's a little bit slanted. All kinds of detail in this handle that I can choose to come back and add later or not. Here's a shape, dark shape. There's a lot of detail up in here. I notice that where my handle connects, there's a ridge here, just below the angle, below the handle. So what I've done is I'm using references inside the drawing itself to decide where I'm going to go with the next line. Some of that detail in there. I don't know if you can see that yet. Hopefully you can. Some wonderful lines here. Now what I can do is I hold my pencil up and I look at it. I close my weak eye, use my strong eye, and I look to see where does that line go? So I look at it in real life and I look to see the curvature is above the pencil when I hold my pencil up to look at it. So that's what you want to do. You know, you want to constantly use reference to what you're drawing and what you see. This is also not quite vertical. It's a little bit slanted in. Great copper here and brass. There's a pattern that runs across here that starts at the top of the spout. So I'm really just putting this in here to make sure that, and it also goes to the bottom of the handle, to make sure that my drawing is correct. So you see how I compared this line and said, okay, it has to run from the top of the spout to the bottom of the handle. You use these references. You know, we're doing a copper pot. There's also a lot of shadows and reflections rather. Use the reflections, you know, build the reflections out. I can see a reflection here, I can see a reflection here, I can see a reflection here. If the reflections look completely out of place, you've done something wrong. And you can come back and measure them out and put just those shapes in. All it is a matter of shapes. Here's some good darkness down in here where the ram skull is. Can darken that up a little bit right away. See how that negative space fills out the bottom of my water vessel? There's some darkness here. I'm already starting to think about my light source. I know that my light is off to the left. So anything that I have that will be in shadow, I want to try to recognize that and put that in there. This is the eye of the skull that I had in earlier. I can use that as a reference, and then I can start to bring my horn around, that curved horn, and it's got some lines on it this way. It's good texture in it this way. This is going to be affected by my light source. It's away from my light source. I can go ahead and put that in there, put that shape in there. See how it's just a triangle. So I'm just carving out triangles and indescript shapes, some squares, some circles. Here's a semicircle here, and I'm pulling those shapes out. Here underneath my ram's horn is a bit of negative space. Pay attention to my actual contours and shapes of the vessel. This comes down and connects in here. So here's the eye. I'm going to use a drop line, come straight down and see what is behind it. And I see the back side of the jawbone. Okay. And I'm going to use another line in here, drop line in, come around and see that this is just the teeth. Some darkness out in here. And now all this, there's some reflection down in here, but mostly it's dark. There's some real good darkness here. I want to make sure that it doesn't disappear into my ram's horn. There's all kinds of drapery patterns here. I can choose to leave those out if I want to. I think what I'll do is leave them till last, and if it becomes important to put in a shadow or some kind of directional device that will direct the viewer's eye, then I might go ahead and put all that drapery in there. But at this point, I'm concentrating more on the shapes that are in my objects. I think we've got plenty going on here, and as always, if you find yourself looking at this and thinking, oh my goodness, are you kidding me, James? There's no way on earth that I'm going to be able to draw all that stuff. Well, what you can do, what I recommend is take a portion of it. Don't do the whole thing. If it just seems overwhelming to tackle all at once, just go ahead and pull out one section of it that you like, maybe the ram's skull, maybe it's just one of the vessels. You know, that's how we learn. You know, you don't have to tackle it and be overwhelmed. That's actually the last thing I want you to do is to feel overwhelmed, because I want to encourage you to keep drawing and drawing as much as you can every day, whatever it is that you might draw. This is down here. The more you draw, the better you're going to get. Here's this shape. This is coming in here. I'm going to be able to leave this out. I'll do an open composition, which means that your eye will extend off the page when you observe this composition. I did that. I designed this. My particular still life, the composition that I have is designed to be an open composition and run you off the page. In most situations, I don't do that. I try to keep it all on one area and inside the page. But at this point, I am just looking to do something a little bit different. That darkness. So you see how that drapery helps me define what else is already there. Got to be careful that my lines match up to previous lines that I've made. Okay, and this is all going to be white back here, so I can take this and get rid of these lines. Generally, what I do is I work with the 99 line rule. You get 99 lines down on the paper, or 100 lines down on the paper, and then 99 of them will be covered up or erased. Okay, so now I'm going to work with my HB. I'm going to double check my horizontal lines. See that the HB's coming in there pretty good. I'm going to look for my shadows between all these ribs. See, where do they go? Start to pencil in just some details. Shape of a shadow. And then this shape is in shadow. I have to be really diligent as far as looking at which way my light's coming. Contour around where I've already outlined where my details are going to be. I might have to sharpen my pencil. I'm good for now, though. Still working in the detail around the contours. Again, that 100 line technique where I'm going to draw 100 lines and about 99 of them are going to be erased or drawn over. You can see that I haven't used my pencil a lot. But I have used it, my eraser that is. This is all dark sheet in here. And start to build that up. Leave a couple of lines in there just out of sake of time. I might come back and clean that up some. There's a shadow that comes across here. That is actually the stem to my jug. Then there's shadows that come in up here. Just a little bit of shadow. And then in the corner is the completion of this shadow over here, which I'm just gonna, I'll see how I drew that shape, and now I'll put in a value to try to bring that shape up to par. Keep that shape where I want it. You know, it'll. What I do is I'll draw the shape, and then I can fill in the value. So it's a matter of seeing the shapes. Now over here, this horn's going to have to be adjusted. Huge. I don't like that at all. So I'm going to adjust this horn, because I can see that here is the line of the jug, and the horn from where I'm sitting intersects with that, and that's fine, because I was wondering where all that darkness went, and here it is right here. Some darkness right in here with this shape. And then this shape I need to adjust, because I put it in there completely wrong. So it's okay to erase. Alright, and then down here is correct. Make sure that's correct. I can see the inside of the vessel. I can see that all this is in shadow. Draw that shape. Chop that out of there. I'm going to take an eraser to this, because these lines are just a little bit too dark. I went too far. Here is the eye to my ram skull again. Kind of big. And I can see that this is in shadow. That's going to force it to look right to left instead of left to right. And then put the shadow on the inside. See, I just drew that shape and drew that shadow right in there. So I'm going to draw this shape. Here's this shape that I see on top of the ram skull. I see this under here. So it's a lot of drawing what you see, not what you know. You can use perspective all you want, but if you know how to draw the shape, if you can draw the shape in there, you don't need to know perspective. Knowing perspective is good. You should know it as an artist, but when you're drawing, you actually can just use the shapes. If you can see the shapes, you don't need anything else. So I'm going to put this happy little shadow in over here. All this, I think I'm going to just pick up my 2B. See if I can, no, I don't like my 2B in there. It's too dark. Too dark to everything else. See, so one of the things that I am doing is working with the pencils one right after the other, from the hardest to the softest, and staying with it. What that does is give a uniformity of value. When I set up a shadow box for you guys, and we're drawing shadow boxes, things in there may appear to be completely black, only because they are. That does not mean that you have to draw with a black Sharpie. You can use some gradual lines. Try to use some gradual lines and gradually develop it. And when you finally finish up, this is all in shadow. When you finally finish up, the entire composition will be in the correct value, because you've worked it with that pencil constantly throughout your work. This is a shape that's all dark. Just going to darken that in. That actually is the shadow of that ram's head. You can probably see the ram skull, and that anchors it quite nicely. I can now use this shadow to determine where should my ram's horn end. It comes around there and does that number. Is also in shadow. So we have a lot of similar values here, which is actually what I was saying before when we first started. This is the idea of this composition, is that subtlety between objects. Those subtle values between objects, where the objects nearly disappear into one another. So there is a lot going on, and there isn't a whole lot of definition between. Not a whole lot of. Oh, that's wrong. Let's fix this. There we go. There's not a whole lot of contrast between objects, which is fantastic for practice, because you are forced to put the shapes in there and have that like a nuance, to just a whisper of detail in there. Sometimes not so easy to do. It's just a matter of recognizing the values inside each value. Now I'm obviously just putting in some of this detail, and you can see that line that I drew before in reference to the very top of my pattern, and it is here. And then I can draw this here. All right. The only other thing is this jug, and I can bring this jug out a little bit. There's some darkness still behind that jug. See a little bit of detail here. S-hook on that pot. And the handle. Now I'll come back down in here and start working my shadows, because I know that all this is clustered up. I know that my light source is off to my left, and all this is clustered up together. There is actually, here it is, this is what I'm looking for, the defined shadow across this jug. And then I can start to see the rest of that value. Like I said, it blends right into the rest of everything else. So the values are in here. There's a lot of negative space that you're going to have to look at. And all this value, all this similar value, bringing it right down so that we can see the subtleties, and we want to work with the subtleties of these values. Okay, so it's all in there, pretty monotone, obviously monotone, but very light. So I'm working off my HB now and coming to my 2B, and I'm going to start to look for some, again, like I start out with every single one. I'm going to look at my darkest darks, and I'm going to look at shapes. Now with my 2B, I love my 2B. It is it's my favorite pencil. It really is. You can do a lot with a 2B. So here I've drawn my shape. Now I complete my value. Same thing over here, extremely dark. Complete my shape. Fill in my value. There's a lot of value to be added, so it might take a while. I don't like to spend a whole ton of time shading when I'm videoing. It's just feels like if I was watching the video, it'd be a tedious thing to sit and watch. I don't know, maybe you've got some time on your hands, you want to watch it, but at any rate, I have to put that shadow in there. Okay, now I'm going to come over here and put in a couple of the details that I see in the shadows. Redraw my shape. Redraw each shape. Come on around here. Is this detail in the handle? Kind of Asian looking copperware. I really like it. Double check my shadows. Just put a shadow in here. Whoop, did I do it too dark? No, I think that's okay. I'm gonna take a look at my shapes and my details. Just put a couple of them in. I don't need a whole lot of them. Just enough to give the viewer some idea of what's going on there. It's some lovely detail in the pot, but I know that one of the things that you need to do as an artist is show the viewer what you see. Your audience, when they look at your drawing, they should be able to tell exactly what it was that you were drawing. Whether or not they know exactly what it is, they'll see it. And some of the times when I say draw what you see and not what you know, your viewer will see that and know it too. You'll be surprised. Now I'm just doing some contour across here to get the shape of those horns. Double check my shape over here. This is just a shape, and then I'm going to shade it in. Happy little shapes. And now this one is real up close and close to the light. So it's going to have a lot of contrast on it. And then get in here and give it some of the value that I want. The 7 values: the light, very light, dark, well, medium, dark, very dark, and black. So you see how I'm building up this blackness a little bit at a time. Now there's some of the drapery here that just is not going to allow me to cheat and not put it in. But that's okay too. These lines here, I'm just going to really quickly put some lines in. See some of the shapes like we do with the drapery. If you've got plenty of time on your hands, you can go ahead and value all that in, which is what I should be doing. But for the sake of time and having my students not turn the video off, hopefully you haven't already turned it off. You know, I want to speed things up a little bit for y'all. So this is in shadow. That's all in shadow. Paying attention to my light source here, and if this is a sphere, just like we've always said, you can draw anything that there is to draw if you know the 3 different shapes: the square, the sphere, the cylinder. The cube, the sphere, and the cylinder. So this would be a sphere, and I know that my light source, just like when we drew the eggs, my light source is going to force my shadow away from the light source, on the opposite side of the light source. Okay, so when I'm drawing, that's always in the peripheral of my mind, because one of the most beautiful things you can do as artists is just show your viewer the light source. Get in some good contrast with some shadows and the shapes. Now there's some cracks in the bones that I'll have to slow down a little bit and contour out. And then there's a whole lot of detail in here that's going on that I'm just not too crazy about. So I'm going to shade that all in. How do you like that? Shade all that in. Eliminate some of this detail up front. I don't want to have that one part so busy, with so many lines that it draws the viewer's eye right there. But one of the things we do with the values is as an object gets up closer to us, we show more contrast. The reason we show more contrast, let's see, where is this going? The reason we show more contrast is that things become more vivid as they come closer to us. This is all dark in here. So I'll have that skull disappear into the edge. This is all dark. Create some great contrast right here. I really like these 2 lines that are coming off of the head of the ram. Get this in here at least quick enough that I can tell that's my shadow from my ram skull. This is the bottom of my pot still. So now I'll come in here and I'll pull out some of the details. And that's just a contour line that'll show us where this ram's horn is going. kind of like a rough texture, a rough look, one that's not so refined. It's just my style. As you draw more and more, and you get about 4,000 of hours worth of drawing or painting under your belt, you'll start to realize that most of your stuff looks the same too, right up until you've taken a lesson with someone that you really admire or you really want to change your style. So your drawing style is indicative of you. When people see your drawings, they should be able to look at it and say, oh yeah. I mean, in the entire room full of drawings, if I put my drawing up against some other artist, you should be able to say, oh yeah, that's James's work. You know, my work will stand out as my work specifically because I have a certain kind of line, and I particularly purposely draw it that way. It's kind of rough, kind of rugged, little less refined. If I have time to sit and draw and paint, it may look a little bit different. But when I do my demos, they're kind of quick. So anyhow, back down into here, I'm gonna contour this out. Look for my darks. I can really see a lot of dark here. That's just a shape. And it's going to go all the way over here, nearly off the page. One of the things, when we started out, we did just that saran wrap trinket shape on the page. And the reason we did that was so that we would know off to the right how far, and off to the left how far, and off to the top how far. You know, you rough it in really quickly with a light pencil so that you don't have to struggle with it so much. So there's my 2B. I'm going to work into my 4B now and just put in some real good darks. I won't torture you and make you watch me do all this shading in as far as all the values go back here, but I do want to get some of these shadows in here because they are just yummy shadows. You really are setting the rest of it off. So I'm going to just take my finger, smear it in a little bit, see if I can get it to smooth out so that you're not thinking, wow, that guy just didn't even bother to draw it. Get in my darkest darks. See, as I pick up my pencil every time, I go straight for my darkest darks. Have to be careful because this is a very, very dark pencil. Well, not a very, very dark. They're darker, but this is a dark pencil compared to what I've used so far. And the graphite will really pile up off of these softer pencils, these softer leads. I'm putting these lines in here to define the edge of my ram's horn, and the same thing would happen up here if I were to put this shape in here and bring this down. You can see that negative space that I've used to outline some of my other shapes. And come around here, I can see that this is in shadow. See that shape that I drew in there before, and now my pencil comes to the edge, and where I've drawn my contour line, it disappears. The contour line disappears into my value, which is what I wanted to do. Again, right down front here, I want to try to increase some of my contrast. See a couple of my shapes. It's just shapes. It's just seeing shapes. That's all we're doing. There are these two white projected pieces of bone there that I really like. Can draw in some of the bone holes. Get in as much detail as you can see. Bring this out to the edge. All this to the edge of my horn, because I know that this is all in shadow. All of these vessels back in here are in shadow. Good heavy shadow right in here. It's as far away from my light source as I can get in my composition. So the light's going to continue to get darker and darker. A couple of lines like this. Define this line just to ground that. I can see that this vessel has a shadow on it. I'm going to try to gradually get that shadow to work in there. And then the shadows up on the top of my vessel that are telling me, hey, look, there's light cast here. You know, that's, we want to show that. All those diamonds that I bothered to count before are no longer relevant. I've eliminated them, but I can put them in if I want to. 1, 2, and what I'm doing is following the contour of the jug, so it looks like they're wrapping around. So these are darker. Put those in darker. Just a little bit of a design, right? Shadow continues this way. Outlining some detail. Hold my pencil up, make sure that I get this. See, that was wrong. So now I've got it right. It didn't look right before, now I've got it. Some of the shadow here. And in here there's shadow, which really makes my pot disappear. But this one vessel that is in front can now shine through. So I'll hide this. It's really disappearing back in here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this vessel and try to make it pop forward by giving it a lot of contrast. Hopefully I'm not coming through on my page. And then what I can do is take my eraser shield, find my line, clean it up, double check my lines down in here. There's a little bit of light source here. This is all in shadow. That's still in shadow. This is the handle to that vessel behind it. Darken this up some, clean up my lines. Get another look up here, see where my light's hitting the sides of this. And this is where I'm going to switch to my 6B. It's really the super darkest pencil, as you know. And I'm going to contour out mostly the sides of the vessel that are in shadow. Since this is going to give me my darkest darks, I can really put a shadow against each edge, following the shape. There's a shape here too that actually cuts this in half. One of the things that I was able to do with the draperies, all that good drapery, is direct your eye. I can direct the viewer's eye using the drapery. So that this line in particular, what I did was make sure that it crossed the page at the high point of this tall vessel. So I was thinking about that when I did my initial composition. I wanted the viewer's eye to be led back down into the composition. So as this vessel has two very tall sections to it that will lead the viewer's eye up and away from the page, I want to intercept it with that piece of drapery and direct the viewer's eye back down into the composition. Now this is looking pretty groovy right now. I'm digging it. I think I'm going to actually end it right here. That was a oh, let's see, a little bit more darkness over here. Again, I'm going to try to get in here with my darkest dark and define where all those parts that face away from the light source. Just a couple more. If I wanted to, I'd come in here with maybe a Conte pencil, straighten up some of the lines on my, let's see, I thought I had a Conte. Oh, it must have rolled away somewhere. Oh, here it is. China marker. I'm going to take this China marker and I'm going to lighten up this right here and right here. Try to exemplify the shadow. Now, if I was working on colored paper, that would be even more awesome. You'd be able to see this white China marker just stand out like sunshine. But right now, you really can't see a whole lot of it. Maybe. But at any rate, you got to decide when you're going to sign it and put a price tag on it. So anyhow, that's that. Again, the lights came from this side. We were able to get the composition in there in a portrait position. Everything is upright. Hopefully, you'll choose this arrangement. You can also choose the landscape arrangement, and it's just going to give you a little bit extra room on either side of the drawing. But you know, you can do this at home. Set up your own lamp. Set up a couple sheets. But I'm going to send the photograph with the video when I send this video for you guys to do your work, and this will be the final video for the class. Thank you all for signing up for the class and joining me. I had a really great time. I love teaching. I love seeing you guys. I miss you guys. I could sit and draw with you guys all day. So at any rate, I hope everybody's staying well. I hope you enjoyed the assignment, and I'll talk to you soon.